Good morning. You're tuned to WKRK 105.5 FM, 1320 AM, cable TV channel 25, and streaming online at country.am. Tim Radford here with you on a Friday morning, and usually at this time we have Sheriff Derek Palmer, and this is another usual Friday.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Doing well.
I always try to figure out different ways to introduce you.
Well, I keep telling Tim that he needs to teach me how to run the radio, and he was gone a while ago, and everything went silent, and I could have just done something if I knew what to do.
That's, all right. This button right here. Yeah, he saw me kind of running.
I told Tim, I said, I don't know if this is good or not, but it's silent. Silence is not a good thing for the radio.
Not a good thing for radio.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was an unintentional moment of silence. So I hope everyone took advantage of that moment of silence and did something positive, right?
Right.
How are you doing on this Friday? And
doing well.
Did you have a busy week this week, or something kind of laid back?
It was a normal week. It was kind of a laid back, but normal week. We've had a few issues, like we always do. Going on at the sheriff's office, but it's been a beautiful week this week. It's been a little bit cooler than it normally has been, and
I have a little more tan than last week.
There you go, a little bit more. I keep waiting on it to rain to wash my car off, but it's not happened yet. But it looks like next week we're going to get some rain next week. And
looks like you've been out in the sun too.
I have. I try to stay out in the sun quite a bit. I hit days where I'm tired, I want to come home and take a nap, but most days I try to get out and do something of evening. And I love summertime when it gets doesn't get dark till 9 or 9:30 of a night, and you've got plenty of time after work to do chores and to do things that you need to do around the house. And wintertime is not such a good time to do things after work. It gets dark about 5 o'clock, but in the summertime I like it because you can get out and do things outside and still get some sun.
Right.
But we it's just been a kind of a normal week at the sheriff's office. As you've seen, we've had a few press releases, not a whole lot of major things going on. One thing I do want to mention, we did have a man sentenced for 25 years for sexual assault of a child in court last week, and the man's name is Mark Jones. He's a 39-year-old man here in Murphy, and he was charged with a sexual offense against a child and taking indecent liberties with a child. And so the officers there investigated that case. I think Detective Holland was the one in charge of that, and she worked with the Haven Child Advocacy Center in their investigation, and they put a case together and went to court on this, and he was found guilty in court, and they sentenced him to 25 years in jail for assaulting this child. And I thought that was a good testament of what our officers out there are doing, and I just want to mention that.
I understand she worked very hard on that case to make sure justice was served.
She did. She worked very hard on that.
And it was several years ago that it happened.
Right.
But like we've talked before, that whole process going through court can take a while.
Yeah, and what happens a lot of times too is sometimes things don't get reported immediately, and so sometimes it may take years for a child to disclose something. Sometimes children reach adulthood before they disclose it. That something happened to them while they were a child, and there's been a lot of those type of cases too, where you go back and you pick up things that may have happened 10 years ago, or where people are just now through therapy and through different things able to tell what happened. But on this, it wasn't that long ago, but it was a while back for the offense. And Detective Holland took it and ran with it and worked with Haven and some other agencies with that, along with the district attorney's office. And they were able to bring this to a resolution. I was glad to hear that they were able to bring that to a resolution. Our detectives at the sheriff's office, nobody's perfect. We all make mistakes, and sometimes things don't get done like we think they should get done as a citizen, but we have very good detectives. We have very good investigators there at the sheriff's office that specialize in a lot of different things. And when we have these serious crimes like that, they're very good about following through with this and carrying it on out through the court process. And like I say, even though you may have a good case and may have a good investigation, sometimes through court proceedings and court hearings and legality things, sometimes things don't get through the courts like we hope they would, but this is one of those examples when everything comes together and works right, and the sheriff's office does what it needs to do, the detectives do what they need to do, judicial system does what it needs to do, then we see a good resolution to the case, and that should be an example of what we should strive for.
I can only imagine how the job of detective has really changed over the years with technology. Even now, just searching things online,
right,
when maybe 20 years ago that was not a tool or even what's the word I'm trying to look for? Not really. That's a medium where people are
Right.
committing crimes now,
Right.
and you're having to search through all this information, and it's a big world.
It's amazing to me that the people that wants to acknowledge their crimes or post their crimes on social media as to what they do. We run across things on well, I won't say a daily basis, but quite often we run across things where people are basically bragging on
Right.
social media, and you have people that are selling drugs that maybe are on welfare, maybe do not have a job, shows no income. They're on subsidy programs and things, and when you check their IRS statements or tax statements, it shows they have zero income for the year. But yet they're on social media waving $100 bills and, literally holding $10,000 in their hand,
Right.
And so sometimes it's amazing to me how people are blatant about these things and post things on social media. It's good for us because it gives us evidence to go back and to
Right.
start investigating things. And we've even had people post their drugs on social media. Post them using drugs on social media. So we're able to go back and look at those type of things and start an investigation into that. That in itself is not enough to convict somebody if they did show themselves using drugs on social media. And the reason being is because you can't prove with 100% certainty what it was they were using. They could say
Right.
it was anything, but you can't prove what it was. But it is a tool that you can use. It's something that you can use in an investigative process. And even for search warrants and things of that nature, you could use that information to put in there to go search homes and to go search places and to build an investigation against somebody. But yeah, you're right. Technology has changed the way we look at things and changed the way that we do investigate things. One good thing about technology, even when you get away from social media, is the internet access and what's available on the internet. There are programs out there that's internet based that not anybody can get into, but with law enforcement certifications, you can do applications to certain websites and get approved and go through these things. And when we're searching for someone, we can log into these websites and it can tell us everything about you, tell us where you've been and where you've lived and all your phone numbers you've had and all your associates and cars you've had and can give just a wealth of information about a person. And so, we're able to access those things, cell phones and iPads and all those kind of things. When we got missing persons, if that stuff's on, we can ping what they call pinging off towers, and we can get a general location of where that person's located or at least where that phone's located. And so we can't do that just anytime we want to. We have to have reasons for that, and it has to be emergency situations. But we can do that and find people and find where they're at as long as those phones are on. So, technology has come a long way, and it's given us a lot of extra tools that we can use to do investigations.
Talking about people admitting to drug use and things like that, it really amazes with WKRK's social media page, because we have our radio station and we have, I would say, we have both conservative and liberal audience,
Right.
some middle of the road, but I'll say the majority of our listeners probably are more conservative, and because we do play
Right.
gospel music, a Christian format. But on Facebook we have a different, it's the same
different audience.
there's another audience there
Right.
that
Yeah.
may have never turned on our station.
Right.
And this past week, and I've seen this before, Clay County had sent a press release to us about a marijuana flyover.
Right.
And so 2 people were arrested, and one of them had been arrested before, I think with counterfeit money.
Right.
And she always talks back to our press releases,
Yeah.
but she was one of those. But the majority of the people there commenting on that thread about marijuana, and it was like, just leave the pot people alone, and,
Right.
and make it legal already. And that's, if we were to host a call-in show on our station, I think the opinion would be completely opposite.
Right.
But on social media, it may be 2 responses were like anti-marijuana.
I've just about gotten to the point now, even though that we are consistently seizing marijuana and doing marijuana grow operations and things of that nature. I've about got to the point anymore where I don't even post those on social media because it does spark that different audience. And if you go through and you notice most of the people that's commenting on those things, I know we posted one a while back. It was a marijuana press release, and it had a lot of those comments on it. like 90% of the people commenting on it were not even from this area. They were from other states. They were from other places, And I don't know if they just troll the internet looking for these sites so they can make comments on them or whatever. But I got to noticing as people were talking bad about the sheriff's office and talking bad about these things, I would go look at their individual pages and see who they were and where they were from. And I found like 90% of them wasn't even from North Carolina, much less Cherokee County, And so, you do have that bigger, wider audience there with social media that you don't have even with the newspapers or the radio or even coming by your office or giving you a call or anything like that. You're liable to hear from anybody from anywhere.
It's a big, wide open world out there.
It is
on Facebook, and I agree.
The only post that I think we've posted that we had more comments and more shares and reactions more than the marijuana was when we posted "In God We Trust" on our cars, and we posted that on our Facebook page. It sparked thousands of comments, thousands of shares. I've not looked to see what it finally wound up, but it was somewhere. Last time I checked, somewhere around 30,000 comments.
People were very passionate on both sides.
Sides of that, and but still going back, when you look at that, the thing that social media does is it opens that audience up to anywhere around the world. And so you have to be real careful when you're reading comments and judging things based on what people say, especially when you're an elected official, because sometimes you may get the opinion of this is what people think. But then when you really look at it, it's not even our local people. It's not even people in the voting district. It's not people that share our values and things here in Cherokee County. And so you have to be real careful and not get your feelings hurt a lot of times when you read that stuff, because it may be somebody from California, or it may be somebody from New England, or maybe somebody from even in the Middle East or South America, So you have to just be real careful about basing your opinions and judgments on what other people say.
Right. Yeah. All right. Let's see. One of the topics that came up today, and I think that this was in the newspaper, about animal control. What can you tell us about what's going on with animal control issues?
Well, one thing about animal control is that, the way the laws are written and the way currently that animal control is addressed in Cherokee County is it's mostly centered around dogs, to be honest with you. There's very few animal laws out there that are centered around other types of animals, most of them's laws. And there are some that has to do with cattle, there's some that has to do with horses and different things in particular. But most of your animal control issues is about canines. With the laws that are on the books that we can enforce at the sheriff's office, is it mostly centers around aggressive or dangerous dogs. It's dogs that have bitten someone, been aggressive toward people. You can use the aggressiveness toward other animals as an avenue of the sheriff being able to declare a dog dangerous. But mostly it centers around people, a dog attacking someone or being aggressive toward people. That's the crux of the laws. As far as animals running loose, as far as damaging other people's property, as far as coming in your yard and eating your cat food and all those type of things that people get really, really frustrated with, there's very little we can do about that as far as sheriff's office. Now, one thing is we could take a deputy sheriff and we could label them an animal control officer. And we could say, okay, Tim, I'm going to hire you and make you an animal control officer. But the issue is without the county being willing to create ordinances, and I know that's a very dirty word that a lot of people don't like to mention, called a leash law. a lot of people in our area get highly upset when you mention leash laws, or you mention containing animals on your own property and not being able to run free and things of that nature. But without doing that, without doing a leash law, without doing some type of ordinances as what is proper and what the county expects people to do with their animals, it does no good for me to ask for an officer and label him an animal control officer, because we would still be doing what we're doing now with our road patrol. What it is going to take as far as animal control to get situated and done what I consider the right way would be doing what Macon County and some of our neighboring counties have done, and it's went full board into animal control with creating ordinances, with creating guidelines, with having the proper catch equipment, proper vehicles to transport them in, properly trained officers to deal with that and handle that, to enforce these ordinances that were created. But if we're in a place where our people don't want ordinances created, or the commissioners don't want to create ordinances for that, we're just kind of in a stale situation. We're just kind of enforcing what's already on the books, legislation has already passed, and that centers around those dangerous dogs toward people.
Right.
And so that's just kind of where we're at. And a lot of people, and even including the commissioners sometimes, a lot of people say, well, why don't you just hire an animal control officer? Well, yeah, we can designate anybody we can designate everybody. We have an animal control officer, but that doesn't give the authority to do anything any different than we're already doing.
Now, if I understand correctly, the town of Murphy has a leash law, but the county of Cherokee does not.
That is correct. That is correct. There are town ordinances in the town of Murphy that the Murphy Police Department can enforce there in Murphy. But it does not apply to the county. It does not apply to the people outside of those city limits. And so that's what it would take. It would take the commissioners creating something similar to that for the county. And like I say, you talk about passionate. You get very passionate on this issue also. You have some people that are very passionate that we need that's something for the county to grow. That's something that we have to have in order to maintain the problems that we may see in the county with roaming animals. But then you have people on the other side of that's as completely as passionate as they're adamantly against it. They don't want leash laws. They don't want those type of things. They want their animal to run free. And I live, away from everybody else. My animal runs around the yard, and I shouldn't be held liable if it gets off my property for 2 hours, And so you're very passionate on both ends of that. And then you've got the whole hunting aspect and hunting dogs and all those things. And there is a viable solution to all that in creating ordinances, but it's going to take some time and effort and energy to sit down and talk about all this and be willing to come to the table and do those ordinances. And if we have people, whether it's leadership roles or those that's in the decision-making process, if we have those that's unwilling to do that, then we're just at a stalemate. We can't move forward with anything on that. And a lot of people don't realize that because they expect the sheriff's office just to go out and take care of these animal problems. But unfortunately, we don't have laws, ordinances, or guidelines that helps with a lot of the issues that are out there.
So the law enforcement officers are not above the law that are on the books, right?
That's right.
All right.
That's right.
So you have laws on books. You have to follow those laws.
We have to follow those laws and what those laws are. There are things that we can do, and like they mentioned in Scout this week, there are things where if a dog is being aggressive toward people, and we get reports a lot of times as I was walking down the highway and this dog is running, it's barking, it's growling, it's doing all these things. But if that dog stays on its property and it does not come off that property, there's nothing we can do about it. It's as long as it stays on its property. Now, it's a different issue if that dog's in the highway, if that dog is nipping at somebody, if it's chasing them down the road. Those are different situations that we can intervene in and get involved in at that point. If the dog was to bite someone, then obviously that's an issue that we can get involved in and deal with that. Dogs attacking other animals. I think one of the things in the paper it talked about, like with goats, if it's coming onto someone's property, getting in their fence, getting in their area that they have their animals contained, basically that falls back into a civil issue, a civil liability where they can go back and sue the dog owners for any damages that occurs in that. But still, if that dog has not been aggressive toward people, then we're kind of got our hands tied a little bit on that. We can use other animal attacks. We can use dogs attacking other animals as part of that process, as part of declaring a dog dangerous, but we can't base it solely on that. It has to be aggressive toward people and biting someone and that type of thing. And so that's kind of where we've got our hands tied with all that in. I know it's frustrating for a lot of people because we have a lot of people moved into our area. And where we used to be predominantly Cherokee County born and raised, and most people here were born here in Cherokee County, raised here in Cherokee County, we're getting to a place now where we've probably got at least half the county that's from somewhere else, that's from a different state, it's from a different area, a different place. And so they come from locations, they come from areas that did have ordinances, that did have animal control, that did have these resources. And then when they come here, they kind of expect the same kind of service, and we don't have that service to offer. And so it brings frustration to a lot of people that moves into our area. And but not just those people, but even there's people that's born here in Cherokee County, that's raised here, that still feels like we should have animal control and have those type of things. And so it's just kind of a touchy situation, and it's going to take those in the decision-making places to make those decisions as to what we need or don't need for our county.
Anybody who's been to our Facebook page knows that we posted our fair share of missing pets.
Right.
And sometimes, which I just saw last week, a situation where someone had posted some missing pets. They were wandering around out in the ranger area, and they do get passionate because the owner of those dogs says, no, they're not missing. They're just wandering around like dogs are supposed to do.
Right.
Which I understand both sides of the passion, because I have dogs myself, but I keep them in a fenced-in yard because if I can't see them, I don't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
If they're going to be bothering our neighbors or out in the road, making cars run off the road, so I don't know. So
I have a dog, and we actually have several dogs now, but one of my dogs that I had, it loved to leave my house, swim across the river, go to a business on the other side of the river, and hang out.
Right.
And it just loved to do that. That's if I turned it loose today and said have at it, that's exactly where it'd go. I have no doubt it'd be there in 5 minutes.
Right.
But what happened was, this is a business that has a lot of different people there. And so as it was going there were some people that loved it being there, that wanted it there, and they would feed it peanut butter sandwiches and, and play with it and all this. And then there were other people that didn't want it there. And business owner didn't want it there. He didn't want it there, with his customers and stuff, which is understandable. And but you reach into that thing when you're talking about animals, you reach into that thing where they do roam. I do have neighbors that love the dog, love for it to visit and come by, and they would feed it, and they'd play with it with their kids and the kind of stuff. And then I had other neighbors that would call and complain when it was in their yard. So it's just one of those things that ultimately had to make a decision as to what to do. And so for me, I'm one of those people that I like my dogs to roam. I like them to be free and not to be chained up or tied up or anything like that. But I had to make a decision that here we're causing a conflict in the neighborhood. So I went to a Tractor Supply and bought an electric, or one of those invisible fences, where you put the collar on it, and it's got a boundary where it can go to. And so that's what I did. I made that choice that I'm going to be neighborly, and try to get along with my neighbors and try to do that. And so I keep my dog within a radius of the house. And, what I don't understand, I guess, a lot of times is I don't understand why we have such a problem a lot of times with being neighborly.
Right.
Do I like it? No, I don't like it. I don't like keeping my dog confined there to my property and around my house. But I realize it's something that I need to do to be neighborly, and it's something I need to do to.
It's hard to make everybody happy, isn't it?
Right, it is.
So you just you just have to do what you have to do.
It is. And so when of course, as you can imagine, with the sheriff's office, we get a lot of neighbor dispute calls. We get a lot of, for various reasons, whether it's property line disputes or animal disputes or, just conflict for whatever way. We get a lot of neighbor disputes. And I sit and I look at these things a lot of times as they're coming in, and I'm thinking, why can't you just sit down and compromise? Why can't you just sit down and talk about these things? But I know it all comes back to personality, and some people can, some people can't. Sometimes things get too far down the road to make amends then.
I think a lot of that goes back to a lot of when people are growing up, they're not taught to compromise. They're taught that
you're always
I have to win an argument.
Right.
Instead of actually talking things out, I have to win, and they won't listen at that point.
Yeah. But I've always been the kind of person is, if I feel like, if I'm passionate about something and feel like that it's worth fighting for, of course I'll stand and I'll fight for it, whatever I feel passionate about. But it goes back to those things a lot of times is one of the things I was taught when I was growing up is kind of pick your battles. Don't fight for everything.
Right.
Fight for those things you really are passionate about and believe in, and don't fight for everything. Pick your battles that you want to battle. But I think there's some people out here that just wants to battle. They just want to be in conflict all the time with someone.
Somebody told me a long time ago something to think about whenever I get in conflict mode like that. and I use it all the time now. And they said, think about it. If this one situation is still going to matter in 10 minutes, I mean, in 10 years from now, then but if it's not going to matter in 10 years, then why are you fighting?
That's it.
So I have to try to think 10 years down the line, is this really important?
Well, I knew of some people one time when I was a child that was in a property dispute. They were fussing over their properties joined each other, and the deed actually called the property line was the meanders of the creek. And so
the meanders
of the creek is the way the deed read between the two properties. And so what had happened, of course, over time, over the years, if you had flooding and different things, the meanders of the creek changes.
What's a meander?
It's the way the creek flows, the curves, and
okay, that's a new word for me.
Yeah, it's kind of the way the creek runs, And so over years that changed, but it changed like a foot. 18 inches or something. It made a curve where it didn't make a curve before. It used to be straight, and now because there was a flood, it curved, And so those neighbors, to my knowledge, fussed and fought over that 18 inches of property till the day both of them died.
Wow.
And so my point on all this is, just like you said about arguing over what matters, would it really have hurt either one of them if one of the two of them had said, listen, I'm tired of fighting, you can have it. I ain't fussing. What are you going to do with 18 inches?
Right.
What are you going to do with 18 inches of property?
Of soil that washed away.
Right.
Yes.
So it's one of those things, though, I think that those particular people, and I think a lot of people out there, is just, like I say, just winning the argument, proving I'm right. And sometimes we just need to pick our battles. And a lot of these animal control things, circling back around where we started, a lot of those animal control things that are out there that people fuss and fight over are things that can be peacefully resolved. It's just people want to prove they're right.
Yeah. Back in my younger days when I was a little more hot-headed, I would probably pick more battles than I needed to. And then one day I finally realized, after getting in a very angry argument, I was like, wow, I'm wrong.
Yeah.
It just hits you like, why am I even arguing this? I'm not right in this, but why am I continuing? But it was to prove myself to win the argument, but I lost.
Well, and that's one of the things that we need to remember. I've also seen over the years neighbors fussing and things of that nature to where one winds up hurting the other one. I remember distinctly two neighbors that I used to go out on all the time, and they were all the time fussing and fighting about something until it all culminated one day when one neighbor shot the other one and killed him,
Wow.
And it was all over nothing. It was all over, like I say, that property line, that whether you're going to have a wooden fence or a wire fence, I mean, things that really don't matter. But once both sides trying to prove they're right, it spanned into something to where someone lost their life, And so that's the things I try to encourage people when they come to my office and sit down and talk about neighbor disputes and problems and things. That's one of the things I try to remind people and encourage people is that very fact that you mentioned earlier. Is it going to matter 10 years from now? Is it going to matter who wins this or whatever? And I'm the kind of person that I'd rather just give you that 18 inches of property than to fuss about it for the next 50 years.
It's not worth it.
Yeah. So.
All right. Let's see. There was an embezzlement arrest earlier, and the newspaper mentioned it's one of our local restaurants. Is that restaurant still open, by the way? Or
I cannot answer that question.
Okay.
I don't know.
I wasn't sure, but can you just briefly touch on what happened there?
Well, like I say, I think this was an investigation that was conducted by, I think Roger Williams was the lead investigator on it. And it was just an embezzlement case. It was one of those things where money was obtained fraudulently. And because I don't think all the parties have been arrested, and I think there might still need to be interviews done, I'm not going to get in detail about anything. But I think it was just one of those cases where it was believed that money was obtained fraudulently, and a situation where there were investors and people that was involved in this that was built out of money that didn't get what they was promised. And I think it was quite a large amount of money. It was quite a large sum. And so it was presented to a grand jury for indictment, and the grand jury found probable cause to go to court. And so there was an indictment issued on the persons involved in that. And I think they were all picked up but one at this point, and still looking for one. But
was there just one victim or more than one victim?
I think there was one major victim, but there were multiple victims involved.
Okay. The one major one I think I read was over a 90-year-old female.
It was. And I think there was other victims involved in it, but I think it primarily centered around this one person, and kind of what got the indictment going. But like I say, it's one of those things that you hope never happens, and you hope you don't have to deal with. But unfortunately, it does happen throughout our communities from time to time. And you talk about people proving their right, and and those different things involved. Sometimes when money's involved, you see a different side of people that you normally don't see.
Right.
And my dad, I know I speak of my dad quite often. But he taught me a lot of life lessons I always remember. And one of the things he always said, and Marvin Guffey up in Andrews always said this too, was if you ever want to know somebody who they really are, let a little bit of money get involved in it, and you'll find out who they really are. And so that kind of happens from time to time, and that's why we see these embezzlement and fraud and obtaining property cases come up. Is you may have good people with good intentions, but sometimes when money gets involved, things spiral out of control.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're getting close to time, but we still need to touch on the eclipse again and the Vietnam Wall.
Yeah, let me mention the Vietnam Wall real quick again. I also remember, I think it's October 4th, I believe, that the Vietnam Wall is coming. We're going to try to mention this every Friday up until then. Pat Swanson is still looking for volunteers. She says she's gotten a lot of calls, a lot of volunteers, people willing to help, and she's willing to put more people on the schedule, more people on there. So you can either call Mark Patterson at the sheriff's office and let him know you want to volunteer, and he'll get the message along over to Pat and Roger, or you can call Pat herself over there to volunteer for that. And real quickly, moving on into the eclipse. We are having our last eclipse meeting Monday with the county before the event itself starts, and I was so hoping that as we got closer and closer, those numbers coming into the county would start dwindling down, getting fewer and fewer, and they did for a while, but now they're spiking back up again. And I think NASA posted on their website that Andrews is one of the top viewing places, and talking about sending astronomers to Andrews and all that. And it sparked a new interest in our county, so we're getting a lot more calls, a lot more people wanting to come to the county. So just a reminder there on August 21st, if you don't have to be out, please just kind of stay home and watch your property and trespassers and things of that nature. But one thing I also want to mention again about that, I think we mentioned it last week, is that, if you do have trespassers, please remember, try to be neighborly, try to be sociable. If you don't want them on your property, try to mark your property, block your property off that you don't want them on. If they do come on your property and you don't want them there, try to be neighborly and sociable and just ask them to leave. It's your property and you'd rather them not be there. If you have a problem after that, and it starts getting contentious, just back off and call the sheriff's office. Let us come deal with it, or your police department, or whoever it may be, and let us deal with that. One thing we don't want is people pulling into yards and property and fields and somebody barreling out of the house with their shotgun threatening them. We don't want that happening. And sometimes if you do that, if you barrel out of the house, even though it's your property, and you point a gun at somebody or you threaten somebody with a gun, you can be arrested. You can go to jail. So we're encouraging people not to do that. And if it becomes contentious and they won't leave, refuse to leave, get what information you can, whether it's tag numbers, vehicle description, persons, and then call the sheriff's office or your local police department. We'll come out and respond to that.
And people probably need to realize that you guys are going to be super busy.
We are going to be extremely busy.
So the response time may not be as quick as normal.
Probably won't, and not that we won't have people available. I think we're going to have plenty of people around the county available. It's just going to be navigating from point A to point B. That's going to be the delay. And so our plan is that we're going to put people all over the county, all around the county, different neighborhoods, different places, to where if you have a problem, we should have someone relatively close by. But you may be 5 miles away, but if traffic's bumper to bumper, they may have a hard time getting there. So Just be patient.
There's going to be a lot of people from out of town that aren't familiar with the roads, so
Right.
I kind of expect to see some accidents that we may not see. Probably a greater number of fender benders.
I'm sure there will be. I'm sure there will be.
And again, we create some of our own problems. Like when I think we mentioned this on another show. We're asking people to get supplies before the people get here,
Right.
like bread, your basic groceries, and
Right.
gasoline. When the Colonial pipeline was ruptured or caught on fire twice in the
Right.
last year, we created our own problem by going out and hoarding gas
Right.
when we found out there was a problem.
Right.
But if we just fill our tanks before the
Yeah.
eclipse and maybe fill up a gas
I
can.
don't think we're in a situation where we need to take 15 gas cans and fill them all up and all those kind of things. And people are going to get out of here pretty quick once it's over, within the day or probably the next day, at the latest. They'll open roads back up to where if trucks need to get here and put more gas in the tanks, whatever, to the stores, they will. So it's nothing that we're going to see this huge shortage that it's going to take weeks to recover
Right.
from and all that, So we're not asking people to go fill your freezers up and, and take every gas can you've got and fill it, all that kind of stuff up. That's not what we're asking.
Yeah, it's not a panic situation.
No, it's not a panic situation. We're just saying use your head a little bit. Just don't wait till the last minute and run out of gas and it's that Monday and say, oh, I should have filled up 2 days ago. So just be a little pragmatic about things and just look in your pantry. If you've got bread and you've got milk, don't worry about it. You'll be fine till it's over with. But if you don't, go ahead and get it.
Go ahead and get it. Be prepared to have to go and face the crowds at the grocery store
Right.
or long lines at the gas pump.
Yeah, so I think this is far from a panic situation.
Right.
It's just using your head and doing a little precautionary
A
stuff.
preparedness
Right.
situation.
Yeah. And so we're kind of a little bit excited about it. We're looking forward to it, and it's a once in a lifetime experience. And there's a little bit of adrenaline dump when you think about that, and the influx of people coming to the county. But from my seat as being sheriff, I'm ready for it to be over with and everybody go back home.
Yes.
So, because you just really don't know what to expect, and so I'm just ready. I told Robin, I may have mentioned this on the radio, but I told Robin one day, Robin Caldwell, the emergency management director, I said the real bad thing about this is that on August 22nd, when it's all over with, when we have our after action meetings and talk about everything, we'll have all of our plans figured out at that point. Everything will be good, and we'll figure out what we did wrong and what's right, and it'll be another 100 years before anybody can use it.
That's funny. That's great. All right. We probably need to have Robin on the show again one day soon.
Probably would. Next Friday, I'll see if I can get her to come.
All right. I know she loves when I volunteer her on the radio.
Yeah,
she just
does.
loves it.
Loves it.
All right, Sheriff, anything else before you wrap it up today?
I think that's good. Just tell everybody out there, be safe.
All right. WKRK 105.5 FM, 1320 AM, cable TV channel 25, worldwide at country.am.